What's the matter? Aren't you up on current events? Don't you read the papers? Don't you read comic books? That's the trouble with you. You don't know the latest developments.
I don't know the latest developments. Who is it that lets your pants out every other day?
Remember when 4 people in a bare-bones Brooklyn apartment could carry an entire show on pure chemistry and perfect timing? That was The Honeymooners. The show followed Ralph Kramden, a Brooklyn bus driver played by Jackie Gleason, and his wife Alice, played by Audrey Meadows. Ralph was loud and hot-tempered, Alice kept the household running and Ralph's ego in check. Upstairs lived Ed Norton, played by Art Carney, a city sewer worker and Ralph's best friend. His wife Trixie, played by Joyce Randolph, spent most of her time with Alice, waiting for their husband's latest disaster to sort itself out. CBS aired it from 1955 to 1956. Just 39 episodes about 2 working-class couples crammed into a walk-up with a table and dreams that never quite panned out. Today, we're counting down 15 weird facts about the Honeymooners. Now, before we dive in, hit that like button and subscribe. It keeps these classic TV deep dives coming every single week. Alright, to the moon we go with number 15. The Adelphi Theater was a comedy pressure cooker with no safety valve. Now, most 1950s sitcoms filmed in front of maybe 100 people. Enough to generate some polite laughter, but not enough to cause a riot. The Honeymooners packed roughly 1,000 audience members into the Adelphi Theater in New York and dared the cast to keep up.
Who's Sweetums?
You're Sweetums.
You're nuts.
That crowd wasn't background noise, they were participants. Every reaction, every gasp, every roar, every beat of stunned silence when Gleason went off script got baked directly into the recording. There was no sweetening, no laugh track layered in post, just 1,000 people deciding in real time whether Ralph Kramden was funny or not. And here's the thing about filming live in front of a crowd that size. Mistakes didn't get fixed. They got immortalized. Gleason hated retakes. If someone tripped, flubbed a line, or blanked entirely, tough stuff, Buttercup. The cameras kept rolling, the audience kept waiting, and whatever happened became part of television history. You can still spot moments in the classic 39 where an actor stumbles or recovers from a near disaster, and instead of cutting, everyone just kept going. That's not sloppy production, that's a high wire act without a net, performed weekly in front of a live crowd big enough to fill a Broadway house. The energy you hear in those old recordings, that crackle that modern sitcoms can't seem to replicate, it came from 1,000 strangers packed into a theater watching 4 people try not to fall apart on camera and loving every second of it. Number 14, Audrey Meadows had to prove she wasn't too pretty to be Alice. Jackie Gleason took one look at Audrey Meadows and passed. It was too polished, too put together. Alice Kramden was a Brooklyn bus driver's wife, not someone who looked like she owned more than one nice dress.
Well, that's just wonderful, Ralph. Just wonderful. I've always dreamed of going out west. In fact, Ralph, with the chance of being buried in Bismarck, North Dakota, I just can't make up my mind whether I want to live or die.
Most actresses would have moved on, but Meadows chose chaos. She crawled out of bed at dawn, skipped every mirror in the apartment, and dug out the rattiest housecoat she owned. No makeup, hair staging a full rebellion, an apron that looked like it had personally survived years of Ralph Kramden's empty promises. Then she had someone photograph the whole disaster. When Gleason saw the pictures, he had no idea who he was looking at. That's our Alice, where is she? The moment someone told him it was the woman he'd already rejected, she had the job. Here's why it mattered beyond the audition. Pert Kelton played Alice in the early sketches. Sharper, colder, and openly fed up with Ralph. That energy worked in short bursts, but stretched over time, it made Ralph seem less like a lovable loudmouth and more like someone you'd cross the street to avoid. Meadows recalibrated everything. Still smart, still sarcastic, and still refusing to tolerate Ralph's nonsense. But she brought warmth underneath the eye rolls, pushing back without cruelty, matching his volume without tipping the marriage into something that was uncomfortable. That balance is why the classic 39 didn't just air, they lasted. Number 13, To the Moon, Alice was controversial, but Alice always won.
You're going to the moon!
Here's the thing. Audiences in 2025 aren't the first ones to side-eye Ralph Kramden's "One of These Days, Alice," pow, right in the kisser routine. CBS was fielding complaint letters about it in the 1950s. Viewers found the constant loud threats unsettling, even by Eisenhower-era standards. Gleason and Meadows waved off the criticism. Their defense was simple. Ralph was a soft-hearted blowhard. He was all bark but no bite. And if you paid attention to Alice, she never flinched, not once. The threats were hot air from a guy who couldn't intimidate a houseplant. But here's what really diffused the tension. Alice won every time. Ralph brought the volume, Alice brought the scalpel. She wasn't there to nod along. She was there to dismantle his nonsense in real time. One eyebrow, one pause, one line that deflated whatever fantasy he'd spent 5 minutes constructing. Most 1950s sitcoms ended with the husband proven right, or at least graciously forgiven. The Honeymooners skipped that part. Ralph was wrong, Alice said so, she won. Roll credits. And every episode closed with Ralph swallowing his pride and delivering the line that made it all okay.
Baby, you're the greatest.
The joke was never wife nags too much, it was husband is wrong again, and somehow in 1955, that was revolutionary. Number 12. Audrey Meadows was the only one getting paid long after the show ended. The Honeymooners has aired continuously for nearly 70 years. Generations of viewers, countless syndication deals, and out of the entire cast, exactly one person saw a dime from any of it. Audrey Meadows, again. Back in the 1950s, residuals weren't a thing. You filmed an episode, you got paid. The network moved on, and so did you. Nobody thought old TV had any shelf life. Audrey's brother Edward happened to be an attorney, and he saw things differently. He slipped a clause into her contract guaranteeing payment every time the classic 39 aired. The studio signed off without a second thought. Why wouldn't they? Reruns were worthless. A relic nobody would ever watch twice. Spectacular miscalculation. Those 39 episodes never stopped airing, and neither did the checks. By 1996, Meadows had pulled in roughly $10 million from a single season of television. Jackie Gleason, the creator, the star, and the guy whose face was the show, earned nothing from syndication. Art Carney, nothing. Joyce Randolph spent decades watching herself play Trixie on TV screens across America and got zero. She eventually received some compensation for the 1980s variety sketch releases, but not for the episodes everybody actually remembers.
My boy is too tired to eat. In exactly 10 seconds, he's going to yell out here, Alice, any leftovers from last night's supper? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Alice, any leftovers from last night's supper?
So yeah, Alice Kramden, the woman who kept Ralph's delusions in check every week, turned out to be the only one playing the long game in real life too. Number 11, New York never let Ralph Kramden leave. Now, most TV characters fade into reruns and trivia nights. Ralph Kramden got a permanent address in Manhattan. In 2000, TV Land unveiled an 8-foot-tall bronze statue of Ralph right in front of the Port Authority bus terminal. Full bus driver uniform, lunch pail in hand. That expression on his face like he's about to announce a scheme that's definitely going to fail. Thousands of commuters walk past it every day. Most of them too busy to notice they're brushing shoulders with one of the most influential sitcom characters ever created, but it's there. Ralph Kramden frozen mid-shift, watching over the city that made him. And it didn't stop with the statue. After Jackie Gleason passed away in 1987, the city renamed a Brooklyn bus depot in his honor, the Jackie Gleason Depot. So now, every day, real New York City bus drivers clock in and out of a building named after a fictional bus driver played by a guy who never actually drove one. Ralph spent his entire TV life dreaming about escaping the job that kept him stuck. Decades later, he's permanently installed at one bus terminal and memorialized at another. Brooklyn doesn't let go easy. Number 10. The Kramden's apartment was meant to feel tight, poor, and uncomfortable. That cramped, dim, slightly depressing apartment the Kramdens lived in wasn't a budget shortcut. Jackie Gleason designed it that way on purpose. While I Love Lucy and Leave It to Beaver gave audiences tidy living rooms and the warm glow of middle-class comfort, Gleason went the other direction entirely. He told the art department to model the set after the place he grew up, a tenement on Chauncey Street in Bushwick, Brooklyn. His instructions were blunt: make it scruffy. And he meant it. If a set decorator put something on the wall that looked too nice, Gleason had it removed. His childhood home didn't have decorations, so neither did Ralph's. Nobody argued with him about it. The final result was barely a home at all. One room, a table, chairs, a sink, a stove, a dresser, and an icebox. No curtains, no pictures, nothing that suggested the Kramdens had two nickels to rub together, because they didn't. Even the Nortons' apartment was part of the bit. Same basic layout, just a little more comfortable, a little more put together. Ralph noticed, the audience noticed, and that was the point. Ralph Kramden was always one floor below someone doing slightly better than him. Number 9. CBS thought the show was too depressing to succeed. CBS had concerns about the Honeymooners, and it wasn't about the jokes. The show itself just didn't feel like 1950s television was supposed to feel. While other sitcoms sold suburban homes, tidy living rooms, and problems that vanished before the final commercial, the Kramdens lived in a cramped Brooklyn apartment with bare walls and arguments about bills. Ralph and Alice didn't bicker over cute misunderstandings.
Now look around you, Ralph. We don't have any electric appliances. Do you want to know what our electric bill was last month? 39 cents. We haven't blown a fuse, Ralph, in 10 years.
They fought about money, broken dreams, and the suffocating reality of being stuck. That kind of working class honesty made network executives reach for the antacids. Short sketches on Gleason's variety show were electric, but a full sitcom of financial stress and marital tension every week was a risky bet. CBS rolled the dice anyway. The Classic 39 debuted as the number 2 show in the country. Then the Perry Como show landed on the schedule. Warm, musical, the television equivalent of a warm bath, and suddenly viewers had a choice between relaxation and a weekly reminder of why they hated their landlord. Gleason pulled the plug himself after one season, worried about grinding the premise into dust. The network thought the show was too bleak to last. 50 years of syndication revenue suggested otherwise. Turns out honesty doesn't always feel good, but it does pay residuals. Number 8, the Honeymooners movie tried to modernize, and they missed the point. Hollywood spent 50 years leaving the Honeymooners alone, but then in 2005, someone greenlit a movie remake.
That kit plus a check of money order for $29.99 plus shipping and handling is the only thing that's going to protect you against total chaos.
Cedric the Entertainer took over as Ralph, Mike Epps played Norton, Gabrielle Union and Regina Hall stepped in as Alice and Trixie respectively. The budget hit somewhere around $25 million, and the first thing the filmmakers did was file down every sharp edge that made the original work. Gone was the volatile red-faced Ralph who ran hot enough to power a city block. In his place was a lovable goofball, cuddly, earnest, the kind of guy you'd want to grab a beer with, not the kind who made you nervous about the vein in his forehead. They even defanged the catchphrase. "To the moon, Alice" became a sweet romantic callback instead of a frustrated explosion. Jackie Gleason didn't threaten to send Alice to the moon because he was feeling tender. The plot swapped claustrophobic apartment desperation for wacky adventures involving an abandoned railway car and a racing dog named Iggy. Rotten Tomatoes gave it 13%. Box office returned $13 million on a $25 million budget. Roger Ebert wrote something nice, bless him, but he was shouting into a void. Strip away the frustration, the shouting, and the cramped walls closing in, and what's left isn't the Honeymooners, it's a costume party. Okay, we're going to take a quick pause, because if you're enjoying this trip back to Brooklyn, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We've got more weird facts and classic TV deep dives coming every single week. Now let's get back to the countdown with number 7. Ralph and Norton were stolen from the streets of Brooklyn, and real sewer workers paid tribute. Ralph Kramden and Ed Norton didn't come out of a writer's room. They came out of Bushwick, and from careful observation of guys most people walked right past.
I cannot overemphasize the importance of the correct swing. In other words, it don't mean a thing if you ain't got that swing.
Gleason grew up surrounded by men just like Ralph. Loud, broke, full of plans that never quite panned out. Guys who argued like they wanted to kill each other and then showed up the next day like nothing ever happened. That went straight into the show. Ralph's endless get-rich-quick schemes weren't sitcom gags, they were Brooklyn optimism slamming face-first into economic reality. Art Carney built Norton from the ground up by studying blue-collar workers, including actual sewer workers. The posture, the walk, that specific combination of pride, exhaustion, and quiet swagger that comes from doing hard work nobody ever thanks you for. And that battered pork pie hat Norton wore, Carney bought it himself in high school for $5. Then there was the hand business, Norton's elaborate ritual of rubbing and flexing his fingers before doing anything simple. It took forever, it meant nothing, and it drove Ralph absolutely up the wall. Carney based those gestures on his own father, who turned simple tasks like signing a check into full theatrical productions. Real sewer worker associations eventually made Carney an honorary lifetime member. The Television Academy handed him 5 Emmys for playing Ed Norton, a $5 hat, some borrowed mannerisms, and one very annoyed best friend. That's all it took. Number 6. The Honeymooners was shot on technology that barely existed. In 1955, you had 2 options for making television: shoot it live and hope for the best, or film it like a movie and spend a fortune. Jackie Gleason picked a third option that almost nobody else was using, a system called Electronicam. Now, here's how it worked. 3 35mm film cameras ran simultaneously, synchronized with live television cameras, capturing everything in real time while also preserving it on high-quality film. You got the speed and energy of a live broadcast with the visual quality of a theatrical release. It was the best of both worlds, and also a logistical nightmare. Most studios avoided Electronicam because the equipment was expensive, the setup was complicated, and if everything went wrong mid-take, you were out of luck. But Gleason didn't care about easy, he cared about control. The system let him shoot straight through each episode like a stage play, no stopping, no reshoots, no second chances, while still ending up with film prints clean enough to syndicate for decades. That decision is why The Honeymooners still looks watchable 70 years later. Most live TV from 1955 survived on kinescopes, grainy recordings made by pointing a film camera at a television monitor. The Electronicam footage held up because it was shot on proper film stock from the start. Risky, expensive, and completely unnecessary by industry standards. Gleason did it anyway, and the classic 39 outlasted almost everything else from that era. Number 5. The Honeymooners was never supposed to exist, and still won't fully disappear. The Honeymooners didn't start as a sitcom. It was filler, a short disposable sketch wedged into Cavalcade of Stars on the Dumont Network in October of 1951.
Wow! A prowler! Quick, Alice, hide your wristwatch.
I don't have to hide it, Ralph. It's at the jeweler's being repaired.
Every time we need that wristwatch, it's out being repaired. Somebody's got to go for the police.
Ralph, the police were just here. They told me about the prowler.
The police are in the building?
Yes.
A few minutes of marital bickering, then back to the jugglers. Except audiences wouldn't let it stay small. When Gleason jumped to CBS in 1952, the sketches came with him and kept growing. 6 minutes became 10, 10 became 15, and eventually they were bulldozing full half hours, pushing aside whatever else was supposed to be on the variety show. Viewers got so invested, they mailed furniture to CBS to decorate the Kramden's apartment. When your set looks too broke for 1950s television, America crowdsources interior design. CBS finally greenlit a standalone sitcom. That sitcom became the classic 39. Then Gleason walked away from the format, but he kept revisiting Ralph and Alice in variety specials for decades. The last one aired in 1978. A show that started as throwaway filler outlasted most of the real programming it was supposed to support. Number 4, Jackie Gleason treated every episode like a stage show. Now, most sitcoms in the 50s hired some stand-up comic to warm up the studio audience. Tell a few jokes, get people loose, then step aside for the real show. Gleason didn't hand that job to anyone. He did it himself and turned it into a full-blown production. Before even a single camera rolled, Gleason would walk out and perform. Musical numbers with the June Taylor dancers, characters like the Poor Soul or Reginald Van Gleason III. By the time filming actually started, the audience wasn't just warmed up, they were locked in and ready to erupt. That energy wasn't optional, and with the technical as well as professional setup, there was no stopping. The crowd had to stay with it, the cast had to stay sharp, and Gleason made sure both happened by turning every taping into an event. By the time the Kramden stepped on stage, the audience wasn't warming up, they were already boiling over. Number 3, the Hucklebuck was a real dance Jackie Gleason thought was ridiculous. That flailing, limb-defying dance Ralph and Norton do, the one where 2 grown men appear to be fighting off a swarm of invisible bees, wasn't invented for the show.
Do the Hucklebuck, do the Hucklebuck, if you don't know how to do, boy, you're out of luck.
That was a real thing people did on purpose in public. The Hucklebuck toured through Harlem clubs and New York dance halls in the late 1940s. It started with a 1949 R&B hit from saxophonist Paul Williams, built off a Charlie Parker tune, and before long, half of New York was bouncing around like their knees had filed for independence. Gleason spotted it at a club and immediately saw the potential. Hip young dancers were doing this thing completely straight-faced, which made it perfect for Ralph Kramden to attempt and destroy. The payoff came in the 1956 episode Young at Heart. Norton teaches Ralph the Hucklebuck so they can impress their wives at a record hop. And here's the thing, Gleason, despite his size, was genuinely light on his feet. Ralph's version of the dance is big, buoyant, and weirdly nimble. The man could move. Carney went a different direction. He took a legitimate dance craze and dismantled it. Jerky arms, posture that made no anatomical sense. Less dancing, but more like watching a man reboot in real time. Number 2, The Flintstones was basically the Honeymooners, and so was half of television. Once you see it, there's no going back. The Flintstones didn't borrow from the Honeymooners, it Xeroxed the whole thing and added pterodactyls. Hanna-Barbera eventually stopped pretending otherwise. Gleason's sitcom was the template, lifted almost wholesale and dropped into the Stone Age. Fred Flintstone was Ralph Kramden in a leopard print tunic. Loud, blustery, convinced the next big scheme was going to change everything. Barney Rubble was Ed Norton with a smaller frame and a slightly caveman-ier wardrobe.
What do you say now? Ready, boy?
What do I say?
Yabba-dabba-doo!
Loyal to a fault, cheerfully clueless, and always ready to follow Fred straight into disaster. Mel Blanc even got specific instructions for Barney's voice. Channel, art, Carney. The cadence, the warmth, the well-meaning dimness, all of it lifted directly from Norton's playbook. And Barney wasn't the only character built on the Norton blueprint. Yogi Bear, that picnic basket-stealing menace of Jellystone Park, borrowed heavily from Art Carney's voice and mannerisms too. Same easygoing delivery, same lovable scheming energy. Hanna-Barbera apparently had one note for best friend sidekick and just kept using it. The resemblance to the Flintstones was so blatant that Gleason's lawyers told him he had a case. He could sue and he'd probably win, but the lawyers asked the obvious follow-up question. Did he really want to be the guy who killed Fred Flintstone and ruined Saturday mornings for an entire generation of kids? Gleason thought it over, decided he'd rather be flattered than hated, and let it go, calling it a compliment and moving on. But the influence didn't stop at animation. The King of Queens? Loud, lovable husband, patient, sharper wife. Working class Queens, Doug Heffernan was Ralph Kramden with a delivery truck instead of a bus route. Kevin James has openly acknowledged the debt. Roseanne built its entire foundation on the same blueprint. Blue-collar family, financial stress played for laughs, and a wife who refused to be the straight man. And then you had Married with Children, who took the Kramden dynamic, stripped out the heartwarming endings, and let Al Bundy stew in his failures without redemption. It was darker, meaner, and built on the same bones. The Honeymooners aired for one season. Its descendants have been running ever since. Yabba dabba doo to the moon. Number 1, Jackie Gleason refused to rehearse but demanded perfection, and somehow got both. Now here's the contradiction that defined the Honeymooners. Jackie Gleason refused to rehearse but demanded perfection, and he somehow pulled it off every week.
Alice, I gotta tell you something.
Yeah?
Mighty fine outfit you got there.
So glad you like it. I'll go change, and then I'll get your supper ready for you.
His philosophy was simple. Comedy is not funny if it's rehearsed. Art Carney, Audrey Meadows, and Joyce Randolph showed up Monday and worked like professionals. Gleason rolled in on Saturday, one dress rehearsal, then straight into the live taping. No margin for error. Unlike most TV stars of the era, Gleason owned the Honeymooners outright. That meant no studio executive could override him, no committee could soften a joke, and no network note carried any weight he didn't personally grant it. The show wasn't just his vehicle, it was his property. He pulled this off with a near photographic memory, but that didn't stop him from going off script whenever the mood struck. Whenever Gleason tapped his stomach, it meant he'd either blanked on a line or was about to improvise something nobody had ever heard. Carney ate it up. Meadows kept a script tucked in her pocket just in case. A young Neil Simon quit the writer's room early. He didn't want to spend his career writing for someone who made him miserable. When the future king of Broadway taps out, the pressure speaks for itself. Some of the show's most quoted moments, like
Bang, zoom!
were pure improvisation. Then, at peak popularity, Gleason shut the sitcom down after 39 episodes. Not because it failed, but because he decided the material wasn't strong enough to continue. No rehearsal, absolute standards, somehow 39 times in a row, it worked. And there you have it. 15 weird facts about the Honeymooners. Which one surprised you the most? Let us know in the comment section below. We read them all, and yes, we argue about them too. Now, if you love nostalgic deep dives into the shows that shape television, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and stick around because there's a lot more classic TV history still waiting to be revisited. Until next time, to the moon, Alice, to the moon, because this is Remember When.